So Baruch Hashem, we're here again. I am always moved to see the Solam every year at the Yarchei Kallah. But today I am especially moved. It's not that I don't have enough bechers at home. I have a lot. But I will use this one, not only because it's a beautiful becher, because it'll bring back wonderful memories. So I am moved to see the Olam. A few weeks ago, Reb Shlomo told me we'll have a smaller crowd, but Baruch Hashem, I don't count Bnei Yisrael because we don't count Yidden, but I am moved to see this huge Olam which once again came together with one purpose and one goal. L'shtasheh b'divrei Torah, lahagdil Torah u'lahadira. So besides this Yarchei Kallah, as my dear friend for so many years, Reb Shlomo mentioned the Sunday Yarchei Kallah. And I very well remember when we started 2 years ago at the beginning of COVID, and the understanding was that we'll have a few weeks. We didn't dream that this is going to go on. But people wanted it to go on. And wherever there are people, and whenever there are people that want to learn, there needs to be people that want to teach. Ho beloi ho, lo kaimi. And I believe life is a mission, and we're all here to share whatever gifts HaKadosh Baruch Hu bestowed upon us. I'm not a rich man, but I give Meiser diligently, and I give as much as I can. But whatever gifts we have were given to us to share. And I try to share those gifts that HaKadosh Baruch Hu bestowed upon me. So when Reb Shlomo asked me, some more time, we're not stopping yet. I said yes, and we very much hope that the pandemic will be over b'korov. But Reb Shlomo, you have my word. As long as you want me to be on Sunday, Bezrat Hashem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu should give us koyach, we will. I just don't know. Reb Shlomo said that in the Sunday Yarchei Kallah, we have Ziknei Rosh HaYeshivas, we have younger ones. I don't know where I fit in. Am I a Ziknei Rosh HaYeshivas or?
Both, you're a bit of both.
And I'm amazed. I just got back yesterday from America. And I spent the weekend with the Chemed conference, which Reb Shlomo mentioned. An unbelievable get-together. We had 500 people, medical professionals, and I was amazed. So many people walked over to me. We hear you every Sunday. People that I don't know. I'm not sure I had ever met them. But they all said, we see you, we hear you every Sunday, and you look better in person than you do on the screen. I hope so. But I am amazed at so many people that get together every Sunday, and for me it's a big, big zchus. Nothing compares to a beis medrash. No computer screen compares to a Gemara, and sitting in the same room, b'dibuk chaverim, b'pilpal talmidim, is not the same as listening to a Zoom shiur. But we need to utilize all the tools we have, lahagdil Torah u'lahadira. So some daf yoimim agid shiurim complain that less people are coming to the shiur because there are so many shiurim online, and that's a pity. And I recommend to everyone that wants to learn Torah, it is preferable to go to a shiur, come to the beis medrash, open a Gemara. That's the way we've been learning for thousands of years, and nothing compares to the beis medrash, and nothing compares to a live shiur. So I hope this Yarchei Kallah will go on forever, regardless of the Yarchei, of the other Yarchei Kallah. It's not the same. So I am once again moved to see a wall. Reb Gedalia, I was sad to hear what you've been through, but on the other hand, I'm happy to see you here at the Yarchei Kallah. I wouldn't guess you had a stroke. You do look a bit tired, but Baruch Hashem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu should send you a refuah shleima b'maheru l'macha v'recho v'shesok yedecho anarichas yomim v'shonim b'toch sha'ar kol Yisrael. Amen. So you spoke about goals. I just remember Mori v'Rabbi Kloizer Magarebe Zecher Tzadik v'Kodesh Levracha. When he came to Eretz Yisrael, he had a meeting with Ben Gurion, and Ben Gurion asked him, Rebbe, what are your expectations? I mean, well, what's your goal? What are your expectations? Give me a maximum and minimum. What are your expectations? So the Kloizer Magarebe said, minimum, you will let me wear my shtreimel. Maximum, I hope I will make you wear a shtreimel. We're not there yet. We're not there yet, but we're on the way. Ein Yush. We're not Messiahish. We hope that because of a time will come in which everybody will wear a shtreimel or a borsalino hat. Don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. So Baruch Hashem, it's a big schus to be here. Sugya de Kallah is Krias HaTorah, and that is the sugya we will be discussing for the next as much time as we have. So I saw the Mara Mekoimis, and the fundamental question, which we start off this year, is Chayves HaTzibur or Chayves HaYochid? But everybody mentioned before, we hope we're at the end of the COVID pandemic. So we're going to talk about COVID. I don't want to get anyone annoyed. We're not going to talk about masks. We're not going to talk about vaccinations. We're going to talk about Krias HaTorah, but a unique shaila which no Godel dealt with before, till I wrote a tshuva, and this tshuva is not printed in Minchas Osher and Corona. A year ago, I published a sefer, Minchas Osher and Corona. I don't know whether you saw the sefer. It's an amazing sefer. And a person saw the sefer. He told me, Rebbe, I always admired you greatly, but I did not know you're a Navi. And I said, neither did I. Could you please share with me how you reached that conclusion? Maybe you'll convince me. So he told me, I'm looking at this sefer, 650 pages. You probably started writing it 3 years ago. How did you know Corona is coming? I was deeply disappointed. I told him, you did not convince me. I hoped he would, but he didn't. I did not start writing the sefer 3 years ago. I started writing the sefer before Purim 2 years ago. But as shilas piled up on my table, I needed to respond. So it was an amazing period, a tragic period, because we lost so many chaverim. But also an interesting period in which we needed to rise to the challenge and paskin so many shilas we never thought about before. So the last part of the Shiur, we're going to have a COVID discussion, which is very interesting. So let's embark. Chayves HaTzibur or Chayves HaYochid? Lemay nafke mina. Is Krias HaTorah mitzvah that rests upon the tzibur? Or is it upon every individual? But shelo kehilchos tefillah, which is a Chayves HaYochid, and every person could daven b'yechidus. Krias HaTorah might be a Chayves HaYochid, but echod medinim hamisuyomim from Krias HaTorah is, there is no Krias HaTorah, only be'asorim Yisrael. But that does not necessarily prove that it's Chayves HaTzibur. Might be Chayves HaYochid, but in order for every Yochid to be Mekayim his mitzvah in Krias HaTorah, he needs to be part of a tzibur, which is Asorim Yisrael. L'may nafka mina. Does a person need to make a major effort to look for a minyan for Krias HaTorah? Or maybe no, it's not a Chayves Yochid. If 10 people are davening together, then they need Krias HaTorah. But an individual doesn't go out of his way to have Krias HaTorah because it's not Chayves HaPrat. Another nafka mina, which is an interesting one, brought up by the Baruch Ber. Where? Masechet Yevomis. Could anybody imagine what's the kesher between Masechet Yevomis and Krias HaTorah? Nobody could guess. And it's a totally interesting comparison. So the Baruch Bera, Yevomis Chof Aleph Berches Shmuel discusses Dina Mikvois, Gimel Lugun, She'uvim, She'poislim Zemikveh. Ubederech Mesiemes, he quotes Reb Chaim. Question is it enough to have Rav Minyan that was not yet Yotzei B'Kriyas HaTorah? In davening, if you have 6 people that are davening, you could be mitzvah of another 4. And that halacha is fundamentally based on the concept of Ruba Kikiloi. You have a minyan, 4 of them already daven, but if the 6 didn't daven, and that's the majority of a minyan, then the other 4 are mitzvah. Would we say the same regarding Kriyas HaTorah? Or maybe you need 10 people that are chayav Kriyas HaTorah, and only then could you have Kriyas HaTorah b'tzibur. Reb Chaim said, this depends. Is it a chayvis prat or chayvis tzibur? If it's chayvis tzibur, then you need an entire tzibur, which means 10 people that are chayav, because otherwise there is no chiyuv. If it's a chayvis yochid, but the yochid needs to be part of a minyan, then it would be similar to tfilas or amidah, to a shemaynas, which is a chayvis yochid, and that is why we say ruba kekuloi. That would be another nafka mina, how we define the mitzvah of Kriyas HaTorah. So I think the first thing we need to do when we analyze and we try to formulate a tshuva to this question, is it chayvis prat or chayvis tzibur? What is the origin? What is the time? How do we know the mitzvah of Kriyas HaTorah? Seems to be a machlokes Bavli Yerushalmi, because in Perek Merubah, Bava Kama, Pei Beis Omid Aleph, the Gemara says, Neviim shebeinayim, in the days of Moshe Rabbeinu, Tiknu Kriyas HaTorah, shelo yelchu gimel yomim b'li Torah. And that is the interpretation of Chazal, of a posuk in Parshas B'Shalach, v'yelchu shloisha yomim b'li mayim, ein mayim ele Torah, kedei shelo yelchu shloisha yomim b'li Torah. Chazal were metaken Kriyas HaTorah, Sheni, Chamishi, Shabbos Kodesh. So 3 days can't pass without Talmud Torah. That is the Bavli. Interesting, the Rambam, Perek Yud Gimel Alocha, Perek Yud Beis Alocha Aleph. And I have a Rambam open. Moshe Rabbeinu tikkun shiur koyrem b'Torah b'Rabbim b'Shabbos b'Sheni u'b'Chamishi Shachris. Kedei shelo yishu shloisha yomim b'li shmias HaTorah. But the Gemara says, Neviim shebeinayim. If it would be Moshe Rabbeinu, wouldn't Chazal say Moshe Rabbeinu tikkun? So the case of Mishnah on this spot says, that was in the days of Moshe Rabbeinu. It's in Parshas B'Shalach, before Parshas Yisro, before Parshas Mishpotim, before Aseres HaDibros. It was right after Kriyas Yamsuf and Yetzias Mitzrayim. So would it be reasonable that anyone else would be metakan atakona without the consent, without Moshe Rabbeinu? So the Rambam says, if Neviim Shebeinayim, first and foremost, the greatest Novi Shebeinayim was Moshe Rabbeinu, and that's why the Rambam writes, Moshe Rabbeinu Tikem. Toras Chaim, one of the great Achronim, Bava Kama Pei Beis argues that the takona of Kriyas HaTorah Sheni Chamisha v'Shabbos was la'acha Moshe shel Moshe Rabbeinu, and that is why Chazal say Neviim shebeineihem. But that is not the opinion of the Rambam, and the Toras Chaim brings several rayas which are not compelling. Ein behem echreach, that the takona of Kriyas HaTorah was la'acha Moshe shel Moshe Rabbeinu. That is Bavli. Yerushalmi Mesechet Megillah Chof Tes Amud Aleph. The Yerushalmi says, Moshe Rabbeinu tikkun leyisol shiur koyrem b'Torah Shabbos, Yom Tov, Rosh Chodesh, and Chol HaMoed. Ezra HaSofer tikkun shiur koyrem b'Sheni v'b'Chamishi u'b'Shabbos b'Mincha. So according to Yerushalmi, Konas Moshe Rabbeinu was Shabbos, Sheni v'Chamishi is Ezra HaSofer, and they're not the same. So this seems to be a machlokes Bavli Yerushalmi. Some Achronim want to argue the Yerushalmi is like the Bavli, aval a Parshas Advorim, it is very clear, Yerushalmi Megillah Chof Tes Amud Aleph, Moshe Rabbeinu was metaken Shabbos, Ezra HaSofer Sheni v'Chamishi, but in Bavli and in Rambam. The Rambam writes Moshe Rabbeinu, and the Gemara in Bavli, Pei Beis Amud Aleph and Bava Kama, Neviim shebeinayim tiknu. And what was the reasoning of this takona? Shelo yelchu gimel yomim b'li Torah. And many Achronim ask, but there's a mitzvah of Kriyas Shema Shachas v'Arves. And in a way, Kriyas Shema is Torah, Nedorim Chesom Adalef, Moed Koten Sadik Tes, twice in Shas, Iboye Poten Avshe Bekriyas Shema Shachas V'Abbas. So Bekriyas Shema is Torah, Yoyotze the mitzvah of Agiso B'Yom V'Laylo. So the Achronim explain, but Moshe Rabbeinu wanted something beyond the Chiyuv of Kriyas Shema, which is essentially more avoido. It is Kabbalas al Malchus Shemayim. If I am not mistaken, I don't have such a good memory, but it's more than 20 years of this Yarchei Kallah. Am I mistaken that we had Kriyas Shema once? You definitely remember. We didn't have Kriyas Shema? Okay, it's an idea for the future. Maybe 32 years.
Kriyas Shema on our daily Kallah.
Oh, so maybe that's my mistake. I said a Shiur and Kriyas Shema, right. So the Achronim explain, Moshe Rabbeinu wanted something beyond Kriyas Shema. Kriyas Shema is Kabbalas al Malchus Shemayim. Learning. And that is why it was Metaken Sholo Gimel Yomim Beli Talmud Torah, and that is why it was Metaken Kriyas HaTorah. So does this prove that it's Chovis HaPrat or Chovis HaKlal? No, not at all. We still have the same suffix. Tkonas Moshe Rabbeinu, Tkonas says HaSofer, but the reason I do bring Babel in Yerushalayim, because in a few minutes we will see an opinion that there's a difference between Shabbos and Sheni v'Chamishi. Sheni v'Chamishi is Chovis HaKlal, Shabbos is Chovis HaPrat. According to the Bavli, that would be very unreasonable, because Moshe Rabbeinu was the same Tekana. So what would be the basis of differentiating between Shabbos and Chol? However, according to the Yerushalmi, if it's two different Tekanas, Moshe Rabbeinu was Metaken Shabbos, and Ezra Soifer, Sheni v'Chamishi, it is more reasonable to be mechalek between Kriyas HaTorah Shabbos or Kriyas HaTorah b'Yamei HaChol. So let's start analyzing and bringing Rayas Lekan or Lekan. We start off with the Ramban, and the Ramban is also quoted in the Ran. Ramban Megillah Daf Hey, brought in the Ran, Megillah Gimel Amud Aleph, Midah Pei Harif. The Ramban says that Mikra Megillah Lechatchila also necessitates a sorrow. But even if one person is Chai Mikra Megillah, 10 people could come together because it's Chovis HaPrat. And the reason we need 10 people is Persum and Esa. So we will read the Megillah even for a Yochid on the condition that 10 people come together. However, Kriyas HaTorah is different, and in Kriyas HaTorah there would be no Kriya for one individual, because Kriyas HaTorah is Chovis HaTzibur and not Chovis HaPrat. So the Ramban clearly says, Kriyas HaTzibur is a Choiva Hamuteles al HaTzibur, and therefore there is no Kriyas HaTorah for one individual. And that brings us to the question, how about 6? I quoted Reb Baruch Ber in the name of Reb Chaim. That depends, is it Chovis Yochid or Chovis HaTzibur? Chai Odom, Dinei Sefer Torah, Klal Amud Aleph, Sif Yud Aleph, has the same suffix. He doesn't quote the Ramban, but he is Mesupik by Kriyas HaTorah. Would we bring together 10 people if only one of them didn't hear Kriyas HaTorah? Bialoche, Kuf Mem Gimel, Sif Aleph, the Bialoche says for an individual, no, but for 6, yes. So if we put together the maskon of the Bialoche, 6 people are enough to convene a minyan and have Kriyas HaTorah with the svor of Reb Baruch Ber, we would assume that according to the Mishnah Berurah, it's Chovis HaYochid. And that is why it is enough if we get together 6 people. Mishnah Berurah L'Shitosai, the one I quoted is Kuf Mem Gimel Sif Aleph, brings us to Kuf Mem Vav Sif Beis. Kuf Mem Vav Sif Beis, the Mechaber writes, Kivan Shetchilu Lekroi, every individual needs to listen to Kabbalas HaTorah. He cannot talk, he cannot even learn. He needs to listen to Kriyas HaTorah. Kach Kosar Shechanoch. V'yesh oimrim, that he could learn quietly if he doesn't bother and doesn't interfere with the Kriya. These 2 opinions are also about Shaboy Leleket. Semen Amites. L'chayra, what's the machlaikis? If it's Chovis HaYochid, goes without saying. The Choiv is upon each and every individual. That's why you need to listen. You cannot learn when there's Kriyas HaTorah. You cannot learn when they're davening. You cannot learn instead of saying Kriyas Shema. Why would Kriyas HaTorah be different? That is the first opinion. If we say it's a choivis tzibur, the individual could say, there are 10 people listening, so the tzibur, as a tzibur, is makayim their mitzvah, I, as an individual, could sit and learn. And if that is the machlokes, first shit is brought b'stoma. Second opinion, yesh oimrim, klal godel, in Shulchan Aruch and in the Ramah. When there being two opinions, if both are quoted yesh oimrim, halacha keshita basroi. If the first opinion is stam and the second yesh oimrim, halacha keshita kamoi. So if that is the machlokes, our conclusion would be choivis hayochid, and that supports the opinion of the Mishnah Berurah. However, I want to make a short ha'orah, which to me is so poshut. Even if we say it's a choivis hatzibur, every tzibur is made of yechidim.
Rebbe, if you don't know whether he's in the Koisen, so he's supposed to listen in 10 times Krias HaTorah, he came to the Koisen davening, he finished davening, he's staying in the
Goes without saying, you don't have to listen to Krias HaTorah only in your minyan, both if it's choivis hayochid or it's choivis hatzibur. Your minyan, that is your tzibur. There is no, if by coincidence there are many people and many minyanim, that's a milsa de pshita, you don't need to listen. So coming back to our discussion, I think, even if it's choivis hatzibur, but if you're part of this tzibur, the choiv is upon you as well. Every tzibur is made of yechidim. A tzibur is not a different creation. Who is the tzibur? Me and you and everybody else that's davening together in this minyan. And therefore, even if it's choivis tzibur, we understand the first opinion. Every yochid that is part of this tzibur needs to hear Krias HaTorah. The nafkamina would only be a yochid that is not part of its tzibur. For some reason, he is davening at home. Does he need to make an effort to go to shul to hear Krias HaTorah? That would be the nafkamina. But both opinions in Shulchan Aruch could maintain that it's a choivis hatzibur, v'afal piken, shite kamoi, shaloche kamoi. So he says, if you are part of this tzibur, then you need to listen to Krias HaTorah. Why do I stress this? Because I think both opinions are legitimate, and therefore I want ikar ha'halocha to be meskabel lefi shnei hadeos. So even though the Mechaber brings two opinions, and the first opinion is ikar hadin, everybody in shul needs to listen to Krias HaTorah, that does not prove it's a choivis hayochid. It's a choivis hatzibur. But you are part of this tzibur. And as such, you are part of this tzibur, therefore the chiyuv is upon you, just as it is like all the others. It is totally unreasonable that every yochid can say, others will listen, and I will learn. And it will only be a coincidence if there are 10 others listening that I'm potter. Why are you different than them? Each and every one could say, let the others listen to Krias HaTorah and I will learn. So this is a point I want to make, and it's not clarified in Achronim. Even if we assume it's choivis hatzibur, but if you're part of the tzibur, you need to listen to Krias HaTorah. The nafka will only be if you're not part of it tzibur. So there's a famous story about Reb Chaim and his shover, Reb Rafal Shapiro. Reb Chaim was an enkel of Reb Chaim Voloshana, and Reb Chaim and a brisk up to this day. They are far more makbid in Krias HaTorah than in Tefillah B'tzibur. Tefillah B'tzibur and brisk is not such a gewaldige peder, and many times the brisk is counterintuitive. So in brisk they weren't so machmir in Tefillah B'tzibur, but Krias HaTorah was a big peder, and it's a famous story. They didn't have a minyan, and Reb Chaim davened without a minyan, but he organized a minyan for Krias HaTorah, and they needed a tzeinter, and the shver was on the second floor, and he asked the shver to come down, and the shver didn't refuse. Then he said, I don't understand you. We don't have a minyan, and there and Krias HaTorah is choivis hatzibur. And Reb Shapiro was the tzeinter, and he did not come down to Krias HaTorah. And Reb Chaim didn't have a minyan for Krias HaTorah. So Reb Chaim maintained Krias HaTorah is choivis hayochid, and you need to make every effort more than Tefillah B'tzibur. So, two opinions in Shulchan Aruch, and as I explained, both could maintain that it's a choivis hayochid or choivis hatzibur. But the Bi'alocha Kufman Vav Beis wonders about the second opinion. How could a person learn? And how is a yoitze his individual chiyuv of Krias HaTorah? Mishnah Brura L'Shitosoi. Kuf Mem Gemal Aleph, Kuf Mem Vav Beis. And the Mishnah Brura says a gevaldige doichak, that when the Shulchan Aruch brings the second opinion, that if there are 10 people listening to Krias HaTorah, an individual could learn, that is only if you already heard Krias HaTorah in another minyan, but that's a gevaldige doichak. If that is the case, the Shulchan Aruch needs to stress that that is the case. Pashas Dibra Shulchan Aruch. So the second opinion definitely maintains Chovis Etzibah v'loi Chovis Yochid, but the first opinion could maintain even if it's Chovis Etzibah. Every Yochid that is part of the Tzibah is Chayev b'Kriyas HaTorah. Rabbeinu Chananel, Masechet Yuma, Ayin Omed Aleph. Ayin Omed Aleph, we learn about Kriyas HaTorah of the Kohen Gadol b'Yom Kippurim. And many people came to listen to the Kriyas HaTorah of the Kohen Gadol, and Rabbeinu Chananel writes there that every individual needs to make an effort to go to shul to hear Kriyas HaTorah, not only on Yom Kippur, but whenever we have Kriyas HaTorah in shul. And Rabbeinu Chananel says every individual needs to make an effort to go to shul to listen to Kriyas HaTorah, because B'rov Am Hadras Melech, clear from Rabbeinu Chananel, it is not Chovis HaYochid. And if you're at home, you don't have a chiyuv of Kriyas HaTorah. And the reason you need to make an effort to go to Kriyas HaTorah is B'rov Am Hadras Melech. So Rabbeinu Chananel definitely maintains Kriyas HaTorah is Chovis HaTzibur and not Chovis HaYochid. Igris Moshe, Orachaim, Chelik Daled, Simen Mem. And this is unique to Reb Moshe. Reb Moshe, to me, was a giant. You know, he was the greatest Gadol of his era. But his tshuva sometimes, well, he ignores Achronim. That is very well known. But sometimes in his shortest tshuvas, he also ignores Rishonim. And Reb Moshe kosav bepashtus gemura, that Kriyas HaTorah is a chiyuv on every yochid. And every yochid is mechuyev to go to a minyan and to hear Kriyas HaTorah. And even if he heard Kriyas HaTorah, but if he missed one posik, he missed one word, he needs to look for another minyan to be yotzei dechavos of Kriyas HaTorah. So Rav Moshe paskins with a pashtus that it is Chovis HaYochid, but as we see, it's not a milsa de pshita, klal uklal.
You need kavanah, let's
Rebbe,
My
the last question. Rebbe, I saw a couple of people that need miracles, they need a Yeshua. They go to 1 million because Kallah, then they go to a second one, then they go to a third one because Kallah. They want a Yeshua, so they go to a couple million.
But our sugya today is not Berches Kahanim. We have a lot to talk, so please, let me stay on course.
kavanah.
Do you need kavanah to be yotzeh?
According to Moshe.
Yeah. We will address this question in another 15 minutes because I have a certain seder, Be'ezes Hashem. The Riyah Kodesh, Shar Kavonis, we learn that when the Riyah Kodesh wasn't home and they were away from home, they davened with minyan, but they did not do Kriyas HaTorah. And I don't think it's because he couldn't have a Sefer Torah. The Riyah Kodesh held that it's Chovis HaTzibur, and because they didn't have a minyan kavua, they davened b'tzibur, they did not have Kriyas HaTorah, and that is somewhat of a chiddush. And I just want to say generally about the Ari. So the Ari was first and foremost of the entire Kufa, besides the Zohar, the most important source of Kabbalah is the Ari. The Beis Yosef brought the Zohar into the halachic process. There are many seifim in Shulchan Aruch which are based on the Zohar, and the Magen Avraham did the same with Kisvei HaAri. And the Magen Avraham in many sources quotes the Ari l'halacha. So the Riyah Kodesh definitely maintains, like Rabbeinu Chananel that we explained and quoted, Chovis HaTzibur, Mishnah Brura, two different sources that I quoted, Igros Moshe maintain Lamaise that it is Chovis HaYochid. One of the rayas that lachoyre it's Chovis HaTzibur, Megillah Chov Da'al Adum Adalev, Kotten, Koyre B'Toyra, but he cannot be Moitzi others with Kriya Shema. And Rashi explains he cannot be Koyre Kriya Shema, Poyres Ala Shema, because he cannot be Moitzi others. So how can he be koyre b'Torah unless we say that it is not choyves hayochid, hat choyves hatzibur. Moyed cotton chav beis amud aleph nosi shemeis beit midrashay bottle. So in the Dinei Avelis of a nosi b'Yisrael mevatlim beis hamedesh veboim lebeis hakneses vekoirin b'shivo. They daven b'yechidus, everybody davens at home, but then they come together in beis medesh vekoirim shivo, and they go back home. So why did they come together for Krias HaTorah if not we assume that it's a choyves hayochid? So l'choyre, this is a Gemara Meforeshes, which proves it's choyves hayochid because they're davening at home. There is no tzibur. V'yafal piken. They come together for Krias HaTorah. I made a comment before. I think we need to explain every sugya lefi shtei adrochim. So this sugya seems to be so clear and so compelling. Medine Avelis Alanosi, everybody davens at home. And Afal Piken, they come together for Krias HaTorah. The Ritva says, Kedei shelo yeh beis hakneses bote legamri. So the Ritva clearly says, it's not Medin Choyves Hayochid. It's a takona. They're not davening with minyan. Everybody is at home. Kedei shelo yeh beis hakneses bote legamri. There must be some manifestation of avodas Hashem b'tzibur, even bisman avelis. So the Ritva's pshat, the Ritva's interpretation is, no, we cannot prove anything from this sugya. It does not prove that it's a choyves hayochid. It's a tekonim yechedes, shelo yeh beis hakneses botel legamra. Did you notice when I quoted the Gemara, koirin shivo? So obviously that's Shabbos. Do they come together Sheni v'Chamishi as well, or only Shabbos? So Reb Chaim proved from this Gemara, Krias HaTorah Shabbos is Choyves HaYochid, and that is why they don't have a minyan. They don't have a tzibur, but they need to come together for Shabbos for Krias HaTorah. Sheni v'Chamishi, no. So this is the Chiddush I mentioned before. So Reb Chaim proves from this Gemara, Krias HaTorah Shabbos is a choyves hayochid. Sheni v'chimishi is different. Choyves hatzibur. According to the Ritva, once again, it doesn't prove anything. It's a tekonim yechedes shelo yeh beis hakneses botel legamri. And Chachomim were mistapik on Shabbos, at least Shabbos, because Shabbos everybody came together in shul. We learn in many sugas in Shas am shebesodos. In weekdays, there were far less people that came to daven together than Shabbosim. So the tekona shelo yeh beis hakneses botel legamra was primarily Shabbos, but Reb Chaim's pshat in the Gemara is Shabbos is choyves hayochid, sheni v'chamishi choyves hatzibur. As I mentioned before, according to the Bavli, both were the same tekona. Shelo yu gimel yomim b'li Torah. According to Yerushalayim, Moshe Rabbeinu was metakan Shabbos, Ezra was metakan Sheni v'chamishi. So gimel yomim b'li Torah is only tekona Ezra. What did Moshe Rabbeinu have in mind? The Rambam in Perik Yud Gimel in Hilchos Tefillah v'Kriyas HaTorah, the Rambam writes, Minig Yisrael Shu Goymer Mis HaTorah B'chol Shono. Maybe that is the Kriyas HaTorah of Shabbos. Shu Goymer Mis HaTorah B'chol Shono. And that is a Choyves HaYochad, not only a Choyves HaTzibur, Ma she'en kein Sheni v'Chamishi. But as I said, the Ritva has a totally different pshat, and according to Ritva, this does not prove anything. Like a Mishnah, when the Rambam, Hilchos Ovel, Perek Tes Halochet Ezvov, the Rambam writes, Nosi Shemeis, everybody davens at home. B'Shabbos, Bo'am leBeis HaKnesses v'Koirim Shivo, the Lechem Mishnah writes, Shabbos lav davka, hu adin Sheni v'Chamishi. The way we learn Rambam today, sometimes we totally wonder, did the Lechem Mishnah know how to learn Rambam? Well, yes. He knew how to learn Rambam far better than we do. And the Lechem Mishnah writes, Shabbos, lav davka. And that is based on the Rosh. Because the Rosh on the spot in Bava Kama In Moed Katan, the Rosh writes, why Korin Shiva, who had been B'Sheni V'Chamishi? But the reason Korin Shiva Kumash Malon, that even on Shabbos they daven b'Yechidus. And that is why it's Shabbos. Even on Shabbos they daven b'Yechidus. But coming together for Krias HaTorah is Lav Lavka Shabbos Ela Hu Hadin B'Yemei Hachol. So the question is Krias HaTorah. Choyves HaYochid or Choyves HaTzibur. There are rayas lekan or lechan. And we proved from Rabbeinu Hanan al Choyves HaTzibur Kach Mashmeh Mepashtis Loshen Rambam. On the other hand, the Mishnah Berurah in two sources clearly says it's a Choyves HaYochid, and that is the Igros Moshe. Lechatchila, one should make an effort to have Krias HaTorah. But when it's a Terchi Yesera, you daven on a plane. You have to make a major effort and waste 2 hours looking for a minyan ter Krias HaTorah. The Ovid Kamar Ovid or the Ovid Kamar Ovid. And those that would rely that Krias HaTorah is a Choyves HaTzibur, yesh lehem al ma sheyismochu. And therefore, I feel a person missed a posik or he needed to go to the bathroom in the middle of Krias HaTorah, he does not need to spend an hour and wait for another minyan, because b'shas atchak yesh al ma lismoch that Krias HaTorah is a Choyves HaTzibur and not a Choyves HaYochid. Lechatchila, one definitely should make an effort to be with a minyan for Krias HaTorah. Question number 2. Krias HaTorah, if it is Choyves HaYochid, is the chiyuv kriya or shemiya? So Reb Shlomo HaYakar, Reb Shlomo expresses a chorus tov to me. I think we all owe him a tremendous chorus tov for this Yarchei Kallah, for the Sunday Yarchei Kallah. He asked before, by Krias HaTorah, does everybody need kavanah to be yotzei from the shliach tzibur? And that l'chayru would depend if it's choyves kriya or choyves shemiya. Mikro Megillah is choyves kriya, and the Bal Koire is moitzi each and every one of the tzibur. Shofar is a mitzvah shemiya, and that is what the Rishonim explain. The bracha of shofar is l'shemaya kol shofar. The bracha of Megillah is ala mikro Megillah. So, both regarding shofar, both regarding Megillah, it's a big discussion. But those are not the sugis we're dealing with today. I just bring a moshel. Is it like Mikra Megillah? According to most poskim, it's a chiyuv kriya, or like shofar shemiya. Do we need to listen to Krias HaTorah, or is the Bal Koire moitzi all of the others? Would it be an afkamina lagabe kavona? No. No an afkamina lagabe kavona. Because there's a Mishnah Mesechet Rosh Hashanah. By Tkiyah Shofar, we need Kavana Shemaya v'Kavana Smashmiya. Afal Pisha B'Tkiyah Shofar is all about Shemiya. And this is a separate discussion. Even if the mitzvah is Shemiya, we need Kavana Shemaya v'Kavana Smashmiya. And the Chazon Ish explains. Even if the mitzvah is Shemiya, but you need to hear a Koil Shofar Shal Mitzvah. And for you, it is not a kof shofar mitzvah unless the Baal Takeh is mechaven lahoitzi as a tzibur, and the tzibur needs to mechaven lahoitzi. So the question is, do we actually need kavana to be yotzei Krias HaTorah? Most people aren't aware that they need kavana. There is a concept of kavana bistoma. We're all in shul. We all listen to Krias HaTorah. Our general kavana is to be mekayim the mitzvah of Krias HaTorah. So even if you don't know the lumdis that you need to be mechaven leitzeis al yedei kriya, it is as if you have proper kavana v'yotza yedei chayvosoi. Beinem ze chayves hakriya or chayves hashmiya, tzorech kavana shemaya, kavana smashmiya, like we learn Rosh Hashanah Chavtes legabet kiyah shofar shetzorech l'shmoyim bar chiyuva, and we need kavana shemaya v'kavana smashmiya. L'chayre the question, is it choyves kriya or choyves shemiya? Is a machlokes Rishonim Sukkah Nun Beis. Sukkah Nun Beis we learn about Alexandria Shana Mitzrayim. In the days of the Beis HaMikdash, people don't know this, but the entire Middle East was a big Jewish community. And Jews lived not only in Eretz Yisrael, in Mitzrayim, in Syria, in the entire Mediterranean basin. And Alexandria Shal Mitzrayim was one of the huge Kehillas Yisrael, And there were so many people that b'yemei Chag, they couldn't hear the Shliach Tzibur, v'hoyu menifem besudrin, to know when to answer Amen. Tosfos says, Hanofes HaSidrim is only by the brachas of Krias HaTorah. But by Tefillah, you can't be Yoitzer unless you hear the bracha. If you don't hear the bracha, you can't be Yoitzer. So Tosfos clearly differentiates. By Tefillah, any bracha that you need to be Yoitzer, you can be Mein of Besudrin. You need to hear the entire bracha. When were they Mein of Besudrin? Berachas Krias HaTorah. So according to Tosfos Krias HaTorah, you don't need to be Yoitzi Yedei Chayvasoi. But we just said, you need Kavonas Shemea v'Kavonas Mashmiya. Ravyo is Chaylek and Tosfos, and the Ravyo, Kuf Nun Tes, the Ravyo says there is no difference between Kriyas HaTorah and Tefillah. So according to the Ravyo, they weren't Yoitze. It is just have the mitzvah of Aniyas Amen. And the mitzvah of Aniyas Amen, you do not hear the bracha as long as you know which bracha was said. Rabbi Yosef Engel, in one of his amazing Sforim, Tziyunim LeTorah, Klal Tes, has a Riches Gedoylo, whether Kriyas HaTorah, mitzvos of a Kriya or Bishmiya. And when Rabbi Yosef Engel discusses something, Bariches, nothing more to add on. Ein of Kiyonim. He was one of the greatest Bekiyim in history. He knew everything. So Rabbi Yosef Engel brings many sources, Lakan v'Lakan, regarding the question, Kriyas HaTorah, Kriya or Shmiya. So I promised a COVID question. Exactly 1 year ago, Shabbos Shkolim. This coming Shabbos is Shabbos Shkolim. 1 year ago in Shabbos...
It's printed in your shirt, not in your sefer.
Yeah, it's not printed in my sefer, it's printed in Yeshura?
Yes, it is. You gave us the print in your shirt.
Yeah, I don't even remember where I print what. I don't remember where I say what, Baruch Hashem. So in Yeshurun, which one?
You sure not in Corona?
So there's a tshuva. It wasn't in time to get into my sefer, but it was printed in Yeshurun. I had a call from Melbourne. It was Mamish Erev Shabbos. So the authorities locked down all shuls, Beleil Shabbos Kodesh. So we have a minyan b'night. We don't have a minyan in the morning. And it was a kriya of Parshas Mishpotim, Rosh Chodesh, Shabbos Kolim, a lot of kriyas. So the Rabbonim in Melbourne, I remember it was the middle of Shachris, and in Australia it was almost Shabbos already. I had 5 minutes to answer the question after davening, and I told them to have kriya b'leil Shabbos Kodesh after davening. They should do Kriyas HaTorah, all three kriyas, Shabbos Kolim, Rosh Chodesh, and Parshas Mishpotim. They should do the kriya by night. Nobody dealt with this question forever, to the best of my memory. Why would anybody have Kriyas HaTorah b'layla? I was asked, this is another question entirely 100 years ago. This question came up regarding Parsha Zohar. So in Johannesburg in those days, many people came Leil Shabbos to shul. Very few came in the morning. And the Godel in Johannesburg was Rav Kosovsky. He was a brother-in-law of Reb Chaim Oizer. And he asked, should we do Kriyas Zohar b'layla? Because in the morning, we don't have many people. And Reb Chaim Oizer Paskin should do Kriyas Zohar b'layla. But that is different. Because Kriyas Zohar is a mitzvah d'oraisa. It is not only medin Kriyas HaTorah. And therefore, Reb Chaim Oizer Paskin, they should do the Kriya of Zohar b'layla. But this is proper Kriyas HaTorah. What was my psak based on? I don't think anybody dealt with the question of Kriyas HaTorah b'layla, but we do have two achronim that dealt with the question. Bnei Yisrael that are in the Russian army. And this was one of the tragedies of the Jewish story. Yiddish Kinderlich were inscripted in many armies in Europe. And in World War I, Jews killed Jews because they fought on all sides. It's part of the tragedy of our history. So Bnei Yisrael that are in foreign armies, and they were given no time to daven, could we have Kriyas HaTorah lefnei alois hashachar? Lefnei alois hashachar is Laila. And two Gedolim, that were contemporaries dealt with this question. Shuvas Maharsham, Chelek Aleph Siman Kuf Nun Ches. And the Marsham says they could have Krias HaTorah with Habrocha Lefnei Alois Shachar. Because nowhere do we find in Gemara that Krias HaTorah is beyond Velo Belayla. There's a Mishnah Megillah Daf Chaf. What are the things that are not beyond Velo Belayla? There is no Halel Belayla. But nowhere do we find Krias HaTorah is Dafka beyond Velo Belayla. Krias HaTorah is Shachris. Shabbos b'Shachris. We have Krias HaTorah. Sheni v'Chamishi b'Shachris. But if we can do Krias HaTorah b'Shachris, nowhere do we find that me'ikar din Krias HaTorah it is noeg b'yoyim v'lo b'laylo. And therefore the Masham paskins, if we can't have Krias HaTorah b'yoyim, because we're dealing with soldiers that cannot dictate their own Seder Hayom, that would be pikuach nefesh. The Masham paskins, they could have Krias HaTorah lefnei alois hashachar. Ein koiren mikro b'laylo. That is the biggest problem the Marsham sees. But that din, Ein Koreh Mikro Balayla, is not brought neither in Rambam nor in Shulchan Aruch. The source is Pirkei de Rebbe Eliezer Perek Mem Vav. Moshe Rabbeinu was b'Shamayim, so b'Shamayim there is no Yom V'Layla. How did Moshe Rabbeinu know when is Yom, when is Layla? Steht in Pirkei de Rebbe Eliezer, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu taught him Torah Shebal Peh, he knew it's Lailo, Torah Shebechsav, he knew it's Yom. But the Marsham says, it's not brought in Rambam, not brought in Shulchan Aruch. The Rosh brings it, Perek Daled, Mesechet Rosh Hashanah, the Rosh quotes Pirkei de Rebbe Eliezer. According to the Riyah Kodesh, and this is in several different sources, Bekiz Ve'ari, also in Sefer Noged Umetzava, the Riyah Kodesh explains, Torah Shebal Peh is Rachmim, Torah Shebesav is dinim. Balayla, we have enough midas adin. And that is why there is no Torah Shebesav Balayla. But because this is only a Kabbalah principle, the Marsham says, we could do Krias HaTorah Fnei Alois HaShachar. Oid Kos of Marsham, the Kpeda is only in weekdays. But Leil Shabbos Kodesh, the minig is to say Tehillim, we learn Chumash Rashi B'Leil Shabbos. Shabbos is Kuloi Rachamim. And therefore, Shabbos, Leil Shabbos, one could have Krias HaTorah. So the Masham Pasans of Fnei Shachar, they could have Krias HaTorah. One of the Hungarian Gedolim in the same era was asked the same Shaila. Shaila Shuvas Pnei Maven, Simelamed. He maintains Krias HaYom b'Yom v'lo b'Layla. And therefore, they should lane without a brocha. But if they do make a brocha, it's not a brocha levatola. Yeah, Simchas Torah kuloi minag. You know, minhag. We say a brocha on minhag. It is only a minhag. Nobody says you're not allowed to. The question is, are you mekayem a mitzvah? If you're not mekayem a mitzvah, what's the point? If you're not mekayem a mitzvah, you can't say a brocha. Simchas Torah is an exception, and the poskim clearly say Simchas Torah is an exception. So the Pnei Maven says, even though I do not think there's a mitzvah, belaylo ela beyoim, however, wouldn't be a brocha levatorah. And why not? He brings two sources. One, Birkei Yosef, Hilchas Krias HaTorah, Kuf Lamed Hey, brings a machlokes between Masas Moshe and Ateres Akedim, two great achronim. If you skipped Birchas HaTorah Sheni v'Chamishi, could you have Tashlumin, Tuesday or Friday? Teres Akedim says yes. Masas Moshe says no. It's a big chiddush to have Tashlumin. So the Pnei Maven argues, if we could have a day later, we could also have it by night. Yesh lodun. What's the raya? Tashlumin is always after. Tashlumin is never before. So having Leil Shabbos instead of Shabbos morning is different than Tashlumin.
Monday, Thursday is al Shlosh Yomim. Maybe you do it a day later, it's a Fadin in the Shlosh Yomim. Nicht Tashlumin.
Maybe, but the tekona was Sheni v'Chamishi. It definitely is Tashlumin mitzad tekona. Number two, Ginas Vrodim, Ginas Vorim was one of the great Gedolim 300 years ago. Oire Chaim, Klal Aleph, Simen Mem Tes. Ginas Vorim maintains, whenever at Sibur 10 people want to get together and learn in HaTorah, they could always make a bracha. And therefore, Pnei Maven says, Yesh Litzaref, Teres Akenim, Yesh Tashlumin, Ginas Vrodim, 10 people could always make a bracha on Krias HaTorah, and therefore, they should have Krias HaTorah before the Alois, preferably without a bracha, but if they say a bracha, it's not a bracha of HaTorah. I disagree with both svaras of the Pnei Maven. The Ginas Vrodim is Mamish Adas Yochid, and the Birchas Yosef Tameya. Birchas HaTorah B'tzibur is a takona. It's a takonas chachomim. 10 people get together that want to lane. Let them lane. But they can't make a bracha. The bracha is on mitzvahs Kriyas HaTorah. So we cannot even be mitzvah of the Ginas Vrodim, even though he was one of the greatest Gedolim, but it's a das yochid legamre. And the other svora, Tashlumin is different. Tashlumin is after, but not before. So my psak was, get together after Tfilas Leil Shabbos Kodesh to learn the entire Kriya, but I recommended without a bracha. It's a chiddush, Sofek brachas lekula. The Masham is also a chiddush. So my psak was, do the entire Kriya, but without the brachas. Sofek brachas local, and Yarchei the mitzvah of Kriya. So today,
During COVID, 1 second or by side, there were 10 people in a room, and they had Krias HaTorah. People who couldn't come, and they put them on the Heilige Zoom. There was a tzibur created, and they named it properly, and that person heard it. That he was the Krias HaTorah, if it's sumik to din shmiya.
no. So this is a different question. When we hear with microphones, the question is, could a person be Yoitze Krias HaTorah by Zoom call? So this is a question I wrote about Barichas and Minchas Osha and Corona. So regarding Mikra Megillah, because Tfilas Shabbos is not a question. Could you use a Ramkol? So Reb Shlomo Zalman quotes the Chazon Ish, that the Chazon Ish says, it's not a milsa de pshita that you're not Yoitze with a microphone. Reb Moshe Paskins, B'shas Adchak, when there was a huge sibur, you could use a microphone. But Reb Moshe, even though he says, this is my opinion, Lemaisa, he was machmir. Darkom shel gedoyle ha'eroah. We're afraid of new things. Chodesh Hashem and HaTorah said some soifam. And I wrote in Minchas Osha Bamidbar a svora to validate the Chazon Ish and Reb Moshe, but alocha lamaisa, whatever technology you use, whether it's a telephone or Zoom or even a megaphone, you are not hearing a human voice. It's an artificial reproduction of the human voice, and therefore you're not Yoitze. Even if the mitzvah is Shemiyah, but you need to hear a human voice. You need to hear Kriya. And therefore, at the time I said it would be a nice thing. People that couldn't daven have a Zoom. It's a nice thing. It's the ultimate b'shoshat tzibur mispalalim. It's not only b'shoshat tzibur mispalalim. And to have the feeling of tefillah b'tzibur, I say connect with Zoom, but you're definitely not Yoitze, and it would not be considered tefillah b'tzibur. But I paskin, you could answer Kaddish Omen Yesh Marabah, and you could answer Kedusha. Because at the end of the day, Kedusha is psukim of the Novi Yeshayahu, the Novi Yecheskel. So in the tshuva that I wrote, I said, you hear Kedusha, you could answer Kedusha, hab and zin, have in mind that you're saying Psuke Novi. Because when you hear Zoom, it's not the real thing. So at the time in COVID, I said, yes, connect, have the feeling, and it definitely is the ultimate b'shoshat tzibur mispalalim. You see the people, you hear the people, you hear the shliach tzibur, but you're not Yoitze. And you cannot be mitzvah of dominion, and you cannot be Yoitze Mikra Megillah or Kriyas HaTorah.
Look up at the roads, Shaila and Melbourne. If next week, hypothetically, had COVID been a one-week affair, would the Rov would they be Mekayim, the Shlomek Sidron of the Krias HaTorah, or would they have to relay the Shabbos Kriya?
Oh, the kid that they lane B'leil Shabbos definitely would not have to relane, because in my opinion, they were yoitze. They were yoitze. It is only the Inyan Bracha that I would be machmer. But in my opinion, they were yoitze Krias HaTorah, and they wouldn't need to relane. So in previous years, I had the privilege of coming twice to the Yarchei Kallah, but because I missed the first 2 days, it wouldn't work out this year. And I want to once again thank, first of all, Harav Agon Reb Shloime for giving me this opportunity for 21 years. It's unbelievable. I started off as almost a younger man, not really, but almost. And Kodesh Baruch Hu Yazreinu Leman Kvod Shemoi, all of us together for many, many more wonderful Yarchei Kallahs. So I want to wish all of you, make the most of these days of yeshiva, and you should all travel safely home, and we should have many, many more opportunities. Lahagdil Torah u lahadira.